In this video, let's talk about mix and match results and type results. So we have learned about using results or type results, and there are many helper functions inside those classes. And in the previous video, we used type results for the first endpoint, and we use results in the second endpoint. But we have also talked about that whenever possible, it's recommended to use type results. But if you try to use type results, in this case, when we implement this post endpoint, when we try to use type results, let's replace this. Immediately you'll see this error, and it's kind of confusing why it says parameter 1 is declared as employee, but should be HTTP context. It's not very clear why this happens. So let's comment out the return type, and then let's try to return 1. Okay, and then return 2. Now you can see immediately the red squiggly line is gone, which means that if we're returning something that has the same type, right? So this one is an integer, this one is an integer, then there's no problem. But if you change this one to a different type, let's say this one returns string and this one returns an integer, then you get this error. It's the same error that complains that it should be HTTP context, right? So this tells us that, of course, you need to have a consistent return type, but it doesn't actually consider the type results.ok is the same return type of type results.batRequest. They're different types. So therefore, using type results, you need to be aware of this limitation here, right? It's usually a practice when you're dealing with OK, then you use type results. And usually in here, you don't just return a message, you're returning something meaningful, right? So let's try to implement this post request in a proper way. So typically for a post request, the purpose of the post request, what we have learned is to create resource. So therefore, the return type, when it is successful, it is not type results.ok. It is not HTTP 200 OK. It should be created. So created is status 201. Okay. And then this helper function, if we look at the, actually, let's comment this out for now so that we can see the parameter here. Okay. So we have the string and it's supposed to be URL, right? So this is to tell the client when the resource is created, from which URL the client can access the newly created resource, right? So in this particular case, we are adding a new employee into the memory repository. So the new employee can be accessed from employees slash, and then we use a string interpolation. We just provide the ID, the employee. So employee dot, let me double check the implementation of this employee repository here, right? So when we add employee to the employee list, we need to give it a new ID. Therefore, what we need to do to fix this small issue here is to first of all get the max ID from the list. So I'm going to say employees dot max of the ID, and then we need to change the employee ID to use the max ID. Only after that, we add the employee to the employee list. Okay, so we fix that issue and we come back and we know that the employee actually has a proper ID after this function is executed. And then the second parameter is the value. What is the value? It is the type. And what is the type? It is the employee itself. So let's copy and paste this over here. So this is the proper way to return a post endpoint handler. Okay, and of course, if there's anything goes wrong here, we can say bat request, but because this is typed results, so bat request and created, they're not exactly the same. Therefore, we're having issue. And this is when we need to mix and match results and type results. So over here, if we change this to results, then you can see the red squiggly line is gone. So here, ASP.NET Core considers the return results is of the I result. So this is iResult, this is iResult, therefore they match. So why this is iResult? Let's go over here. And let's go to the definition, and then let's go to the definition of this. And you can see that it implements iResults. And of course, results.batRequest also implements iResult. So it considers they are the same. But when we use TypedResults, it kind of explicitly compare the types, and ASP.NET Core considers they are different types. So here we need to remember that if everything goes well, we try to use TypedResults. And this way, we have talked about the benefits of using TypedResults in the previous video, right? And when things went wrong, then we can use results so that they actually match, right? And there's no issues. And let's give it a try and see what's the result. So let's go to Postman over here, and let's try to run. First of all, let's change this one to -4, and then click on the send button. And you can see that it says employee is not provided or is not valid. That's because the ID is less than 0. So let's change it to 4 and click on send. All right, so we get a 201 created, and we can see that the returned results, right? So this is a newly created employee here. The only problem is this ID is 3. We're going to solve this problem later. But for now, let's go to headers, and we can see the location header contains /employees/3, and that comes from the URL that we just provided. So what is the reason why we have the employee ID number 3 that is returned in the body? Well, that must be because we implemented this wrong. So let's go to here, and this is the max ID +1. It is not max ID. So this is the issue. So let's fix it, and then click on the run button again and try to test it again. So let's click on send. Now we see the ID becomes number 4. Okay, and I believe ID is not required. So let's go over here, make sure. Okay, ID is not required. So in fact, when we create new employees, we don't need to provide ID. So let's delete this, and let's create another one. And this time we're going to call it just Jerry, maybe Jerry Anderson, and developer. Okay, and the salary maybe 150,000, and click on send again. Now employee is not valid because ID is not provided. Well, that's fine. ID doesn't have to be provided because we already has a functionality that takes care of this, which means that I have to delete this. Maybe let's do this. Let's do this way. This, and this becomes a correct logic. So if the employee is null, then we return 400 bad request. Otherwise, we return 201 created. Okay, let's run it again. And now let's click on the send button. So we created employee number 4 because we rerun the app. That's why the newly created employee is number 4. Right, and if I change this one to Tom Anderson, this time he is a manager, and the salary is, let's say it's even a lower salary, and click on the send button. Now we have ID number 5. So our repository is working correctly. Our status code is also working correctly. And that's everything I want to show you in this video. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, I will see you in the next one.